ॐ तवगतामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गणन्ति ते भूरिराजनः. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to squirt souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone. Today, of course, is a very special day. This is actual Titi, Janma Titi, the birth anniversary of Sri Ramakrishna, according to the lunar calendar. And they had a nice celebration. Did any of you watch the Bellarmut website? And beautiful singing. Now we have so many talented singers, brahmacharis and young monks and everything. It's really fantastic. And one thing that not everyone knows is that the morning after Sri Ramakrishna's birthday celebration is when we have our sannyasa ceremony. So and now a whole batch of brahmacharis are now new sannyasis. Yeah. As I thought I would just say a few words about that. It's such a nice occasion that the future sannyasis of the order, they'll fast the whole day, and then they'll get up early in the morning. If I remember correctly, something like 2:30 or 3, something like that, and then in the pitch dark, take a bath in the Ganga, and then go into the main temple. And it's hard to imagine, but right in the middle of the temple, there'll be 2 big fires that are set up. There's Virajahoma fires, and there'll be 2 different groups of the brahmacharis that will circle the fires, and the acharyas will be there, and then there's a whole ceremony that goes on. And the president of the order is there, and we get our Garuba cloth that day and go to the shrine and then get our names afterwards. So a very beautiful ceremony. So I always connect the Shivratri and Thakur's birthday and the sannyas ceremony, because they're all within 4 days of each other. And if you remember that during the Shivratri, when Thakur was just a boy, 11, I think, when he had his samadhi and everything, that they don't say anything about his birthday, but they say he remained in that state for 3 days. That means up until his birthday. So that period between Shivratri and Thakur's birthday is also kind of, we can think of that period when Thakur was lost in that state of Shiva. And then at Bellarmut, this sannyas ceremony takes place.
Is it open to the public?
No. Even the brahmacharis are not allowed to go. The whole temple is closed. So they don't only, those who've already taken the sannyas vows are allowed to go and witness that. Yeah. And then afterwards, everyone goes to the President Maharaj's headquarters and they get their new name. So everyone is excited to find out what their name is. And then they'll finally get something to eat after a long time. And then they'll prepare for going out for begging their food for the first time. So around 10 in the morning, they'll go out in pairs and walk barefoot far enough so that we're not within that range of all the devotees. So we go to some place where people don't know what's going on, and bake food, take it back, and the food that it's gotten from begging, the first thing we do is we take some of that, and it gets offered to Thakur in the shrine, in the temple, because he used to say that any food from begging is pure food. Doesn't matter who cooked it or anything like it, it's pure. And then some goes to President Maharaj, and then the rest we go and we all share it and have and everything is outside for that whole period. There's no sleeping or taking food in the dining hall or anything like that. So it's a really beautiful occasion. And they'll be singing and dancing and everything. So it's very nice. Okay. We're on the chapter Instruction to Vaishnavas and Brahmos. This is page 390. and it's Tuesday, October 16th, 1883. There's an interesting group of people with Sri Ramakrishna here. One is Rakal, and then Balaram's father. So Balaram's father, you'll remember from last time, most of the conversation is directed toward him. And this is for two reasons. One is that there was some objection to Balaram coming to Sri Ramakrishna. So Sri Ramakrishna wanted to assure Balaram's father that he was coming to a good place. He shouldn't worry. He shouldn't have any objection to that. And two, Thakur had great regard for the Vaishnava tradition, but also saw that there was a tendency to be one-sided and a little exclusive. So the second thing we find is that Thakur is trying to broaden the views of the Balaram's father. Although Balaram's father seems to be rather liberal in his thinking, but at the same time, they would have been happier if Balaram devoted himself and kept company within that little Vaishnava circle rather than going to Sri Ramakrishna. So these two things are kind of there together. So Rakal, Balaram's father, Beni Pal, M, Mani Malik, Ishan, Kishori, and other devotees. So some are Thakur is very intimate, close devotees like Rakal, and then we have the Vaishnava tradition of Balaram's father, and then we have the Brahma Samaj people. They're also there. So the last thing we saw is that Thakur had requested Ramlal to sing a song describing how Caitanya embraced the monastic life. Now, when we talk about a Vaishnava, in this context, it's not any Vaishnava. These are very strictly followers of Caitanya Deva. It's not that they're followers of Rama or Krishna from Dwaraka or anything like that. They're very specific. It's a very specific thing. And so there's tremendous devotion to Caitanya Deva, and his sannyasa is a story that's told over and over and over again. There's so many songs that were composed about that, and with the great pathos, these songs are sung and they're recited, and there's a whole thing called Nimai Sannyas that is very popular in Bengal, and you'll find people weeping because here the young man, 24, and his first wife had died of snake bite, and he'd arranged the second marriage, but his whole mind was Vishnupriya, who like Holy Mother, became one of the spiritual leaders later, Vishnupriya, and his mother, Sati Devi, had to witness the death of all of her children, except this one son, one other son, who renounced the world. And now this Nimai, he's the only one left. And for him to have to tell his mother he also wants to become a monk and leave, renounce the world, and asking for her permission and everything. So tremendous pathos with all of this, that she has to witness her only remaining son, other than the one who renounced the world, also want to give up the world. So there's so many beautiful songs. So this says, over the vision I held in Kesha Bharati's hut. Kesha Bharati is the one who gave the sannyas vows to Caitanya Deva. Gauda, there are all these different names, Gauranga, Gauda, all names of Caitanya Deva. Gauda in all his matchless grace, shedding tears in 1,000 streams. Like a mad elephant, he dances in ecstasy and sings, drunk with an overwhelming love. Rolling flat upon the ground and swimming in his tears, he weeps and shouts Lord Hari's name, piercing the very heavens with his cries, loud as a lion's roar. Then most humbly, he begs men's love to feel himself the servant of God. Shorn of his locks, he has put on the yogi's ochre robe. Even the hardest heart must melt to see his pure and heavenly love. Smitten by man's deep woe, he has abandoned everything and pours out unstintingly. Oh, would that Premdas were his slave, and passing from door to door might sing Gauranga's endless praise. The master asked Manimalek to quote the words of Tulsidas to the effect that one who has developed love of God could not observe caste distinctions. One of the distinctive features of this Chaitanya Lila was that they didn't bother with any of this caste, and equally gave the name of God to the so-called outcasts and anyone else. Yeah, when Thakur says there's no caste among devotees, this is the way to get rid of caste. Everyone becomes a devotee of God. This was something that was part of the Chaitanya tradition earlier also. And many of the other, during this Renaissance period in India, North India, especially South India also, of course, many of these great devotional teachers and poet saints and everything, they didn't care for these distinctions, even Hindu Muslim distinctions. So with Kabir and others, and Guru Nanak and everything. It was the philosophers who were more uh, interested in keeping the caste and the orthodox systems alive. Money. The throat of the chatak bird is pierced with thirst. All around are the waters of the Ganges, the Jamuna, the Saraju, and of innumerable other rivers and lakes, but the bird will not touch any of these. It only looks up expectantly for the rain that falls when the star Swati is in the ascendant. Master. That means that love for the lotus feet of God is alone real, and all else is illusory. We're used to this, the Gyanis, saying the Brahman alone is real and the world is illusory. So we start to understand the meaning of illusory. That here is very clear that it means that everything else is secondary, of no ultimate value. So when the Jnani says that this world is unreal, there'll be some Jnanis who will really see everything like a dream. And there are others who will simply say that compared to Brahman, this is all fleeting and transitory. Thakur's view was always that anitya was a better way of understanding this idea of mithya, that false means that it is fleeting, that nothing lasts, there's nothing permanent to it. And from a value point of view, there's nothing inherently valuable about things of the world, that ultimately they can't satisfy us, that we'll have to give them up one day. And whatever we think is of value, and then we find out there's something hollow in that type of enjoyment. So this is beautiful. God alone is real and all else is illusory. From the point of view of the devotee, so love for the lotus feet of God alone is real, all else is illusory. Money. Tulsi also said, Tulsidas, at the touch of the philosopher's stone, the 8 metals become gold. Likewise, all castes, even the butcher and the untouchable, become pure by repeating Hari's name. Without Hari's name, the people of the 4 castes are but butchers. Master, the hide that the scriptures forbid one to touch can be taken inside the temple after it has been tanned. So that means that even the worst sinner, after being converted by the love of God, can be considered perfectly pure in heart. Man becomes pure by repeating the name of God. Therefore, one should practice the chanting of God's name. I said to Jadu Malik's mother, in the hour of death, you will think only of worldly things, of family, children, executing the will, and so forth. This is Jadu Malik, we know, was a very, very wealthy person, and he had a kind of friendship with Sri Ramakrishna. He respected him and liked him, but treated him more like a friend, not with the same reverence that others did. And Thakur also liked him. Thakur liked all different sorts of people. And he was within walking distance. He could easily walk to his house, just through the southern gate of Dakshineshwar. And his mother was very fond of Sri Ramakrishna also. So they're were many times when he had conversations with Jodhu Malik's mother also. So he says, in the hour of death, you will think only of worldly things, of family, children, executing the will, and so forth. The thought of God will not come to your mind. The way to remember God in the hour of death is to practice now the repetition of his name and the chanting of his glories. Yeah, if we take this very seriously, this idea that if we think of God at the final moment and take the name of God at the final moment, that we don't have to worry about anything now. We just have to do it at the final moment. Huh? But it won't happen. It won't happen. The whatever the tenor of our life is, whatever the thrust of our life is, that will come to the forefront at the end. This is the theory, at least. And if we don't dedicate our minds and hearts to God, that won't be the thought that comes at the end. So really one way of understanding spiritual life is that we try to prepare for the final moment, prepare the mind, train the mind to uh, think of God, repeat the holy name and everything, so that will come to the mind at the end, at the very final moment. So the way to remember God in the hour of death is to practice now the repetition of his name and the chanting of his glories. If one keeps up this practice, then in the hour of death, one will repeat the name of God. It'll automatically happen. We won't have to make any effort. That thought will come into the mind. When the cat pounces upon the bird only squawks and does not say Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, because you can teach them. You can teach these parrots, these minor birds and other things to say all of those things. But it's just mechanical. It doesn't mean anything for them. It is good to prepare for death. Sometimes Thakur says that one should constantly remember death. Now, when he says that, it's not a morbid type of thing. We shouldn't always be thinking about dying, but we should always remember that none of the things that we have now will go with us, that this life will end at some point, that nothing is forever, that the things we're so attached to, we're going to have to give up no matter what. To remind ourselves of those things, it brings tremendous detachment to the mind if we remember that. So it says, it is good to prepare for death. One should constantly think of God and chant his name in solitude during the last years of one's life. If the elephant is put into the stable after its bath, it is not soiled again by dirt and dust. Now, this is a very interesting theory that Thakur has, that whatever we've done up to this point is well and good, but we have to continue. This was Totapuri's idea, that doesn't matter how many times you polish the brass pot, if you stop polishing it, it'll get tarnished. So it has to be continued. Otherwise, if like the elephant, after the bath, we roll around in the dust, then go to the stable, what good will it have done to take the bath in the first place? So it means that daily we have to do these things, and until it becomes second nature to us, then we don't have to make any effort. But in the beginning, we have to form that habit so that it becomes natural, and we keep it up throughout one's life. We won't be able to do the same type of spiritual practice as we get older that we do when we're young. We have to understand that. Those who are fortunate enough to begin spiritual life at a young age, that's the time to do very intense meditation, to lead a very austere life, to not worry about taking care of the body and the health or anything like that, to dive deep. This is why Thakur kept telling his young disciples, the future monks of the order, to dive deep in spiritual life. That's the time to do it. And as we get older, we practice more of this constant recollection of God. Shoran Monan, they call it. Smarana Manana, that remembering God, thinking of God. And remembering God and thinking of God, if we're talking about that infinite absolute Brahman, nothing to remember and nothing to think of. We're one with that. That has no qualities, attributes. Generally, we take this to mean some personal form of God. And the easiest way, of course, is the avatar. So Remembering God and thinking of the avatar, Thakur says, worshiping God and worshiping the avatar are one and the same. So the easiest thing is to let the mind dwell on this lila, this divine play. There's not a lila of the Lord in the form of any Rama, Krishna, Sri Ramakrishna, Buddha, Christ, any of these avatars, that Caitanya Deva, and uh, just let the mind dwell and float and bob up and down on the ocean of that divine thought, because we can't expect to be able to sit for long hours in meditation when we get aches and pains in the body and we don't have the physical or mental stamina at that point. We try. Of course, we can still try. But long hours of puja and japa and meditation can be replaced just by letting the mind dwell. A lot of this can be through reading. A lot of it nowadays can be through listening to all the talks that we have online and everything. Some of our devotees, they're fantastic. All day long, they'll be listening to these different talks, or now so many beautiful bhajans and things are available. Whole day, they'll be living in Bellarmut with the different talks and with the different pujas that are going on, and so many beautiful singers now there that that'll be the way they pass their time, and in great joy. Retired people, otherwise, what would they do? They'd be bored, not much to do. It's a very wonderful way to pass the time. Balaram's father, Mani Malik, and Benipal were all elderly men. Did the master give this instruction especially for their benefit? Master, why do I ask you to think of God and chant his name in solitude? Yeah, this was one of the very special teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. Holy company, number one. If we can't get a holy company, solitude. And even if we get holy company, solitude from time to time. In solitude, we get to really examine ourselves. Outside of the gaze of anybody else, we get to really see, look deep inside of ourselves, what's important to us, what is our real goal in life. We have the opportunity to really dive deep within, to not think about anyone else or anything else. Tremendous spiritual practice, solitude, and something that has to be cultivated. Some people are not cut out for it, that they feel lonely, they get depressed, they feel bored living alone, and other people revel in it. It's such a wonderful feeling, just no one else is there, just you and Thakur, mother, you and the Lord, whatever. And there's a certain amount of joy, because then we don't have to think about any of these coverings that we have. We don't have to think about our appearance, or we don't have to think about what other people will say about us or how they look upon us. Will they criticize? We're free from all of that. Then we can be who we really are. We can just be the self at that time. We just be the devotee, child of God, anything. So Thakur, he put tremendous emphasis on solitude. Why do I ask you to think of God and chant his name in solitude? Living in the world day and night, one suffers from worries. Haven't you noticed a brother killing brother for a foot of land? The Sikh said to me, the cause of all worry and confusion is these three: land, woman, and money. Now, this, of course, for men. And why land? Because always worried about possessions, things that we have. Woman, because this mind is always filled with lust and filled with desire for enjoyment and everything. And then money, greed. So really, this means the passions. That these are the things. And Thakur's, he had not just a philosophy, he had a psychology. His psychology was remove yourself from any contact with temptation in the beginning. This was his theory. It wasn't that we just have to have that strength of mind. That no, I won't allow the mind to be attracted to things, but I'll enjoy things. This mental renunciation is a frightening thing. If we think that it means I can do anything that I want to do, but I won't be attached to it. No, the mind will get attached. So he says in the beginning, we have to really withdraw from uh, worldly company. Worldly company. This. I'm not talking about people who just, you know, family people and have their jobs and everything, but people really materialistic people with no interest in spiritual life and just in as much enjoyment and pleasure and money and parties and all of that. This is like poison for a devotee. That we have to withdraw from that and really keep ourselves in a very spiritual, holy environment. If we have a place like our center, that people can come and spend more time here, then they feel the effects of all of these things. So it wasn't simply strengthen the mind so you're not attracted to these things, but don't place yourself in a situation where you'll be tempted to enjoy these things. This is what he means when he says that when the plant is very small, we have to put a little fence around it to keep the cows and the goats and the other animals from coming in and eating it. When the tree gets big, we don't have to worry about it. We take down the fence. Then we can do anything, but it's got to be big and strong. He said, then you can even tie an elephant to it, and nothing will happen. You are leading a householder's life. So this refers to all of them. Rakal is there. Rakal is he was married, but not really leading a householder's life. But for the others, the elderly ones, why should you be afraid of the world? When Rama said to Dasharatha that he was going to renounce the world, it worried his father, and the king sought counsel of Vashishta. Vashishta said to Rama, Rama, why should you give up the world? Reason with me. Is this world outside God? What is there to renounce and what is there to accept? Nothing whatever exists but God. It is Brahman alone that appears as Ishvara, Maya, living beings, and the universe. So what Thakur is saying is not that, you know, why should you be afraid of the world? Not that you can do whatever you want in the world, but no need to renounce the world. As a householder, this mental renunciation is the main thing. But it also involves monitoring our behavior and making sure that we do, even living in the world, from time to time go into solitude, keep holy company, all of these other things. Now he makes this a very great statement. Nothing whatever exists but God. It is Brahman alone that appears as Ishvara, Maya, living beings, and the universe. Now we get some very deep philosophy. That doesn't say that Brahman alone that manifests as Ishvara, appears as Ishvara, Maya, living beings, and the universe. Now, how do we understand this? This is a point that many people get a little bit confused about. What is this distinction between Brahman and Ishvara? Huh? Or Brahman and Kali, or Brahman and Shakti? And Ishvara is more or less the same. Ishvara Saguna Brahman is exactly what Thakur means by Divine Mother, because it's Brahman together with Shakti, together with the power, or with the gunas, Saguna. And so that's exactly what he means. And the distinction that he makes between Brahman and Ishvara is that Ishvara is a Brahman looked at from the point of view of having power, having this power to project the universe and this power to uphold the universe and withdraw the universe. Now, I like one way I think it's helpful to understand all of this is to think of the relationship between sleeping, dreaming, and acting in a dream. If we take it this way, so Brahman will be like someone who's sleeping. There's no guna, there's no attribute, there's nothing going on. It's just pure consciousness, just sleeping. Now, when this sleeping individual has a dream, then that sleeping individual becomes a dreamer, right? Becomes a dreamer, the source of this dream world. Now, does that sleeping individual, dreaming individual, is he still not the sleeper? one and the same person. Now, first we just say this is a sleeping person. Now we say it's a dreaming person, but also a sleeping person, both sleeping and dreaming. So this the Brahman aspect is always there, the sleeping aspect, because it's not that you wake up and have the dream. It's still sleeping but dreaming at the same time. Then what is this Maya? How is it that someone who is sleeping can, who has no willpower, who is not deciding, now let me have a dream, because there's no awareness, there's nothing, just pure empty consciousness there. What is responsible for the sleeping person to become a dreaming person? Maya. Well, another way of saying we don't know exactly, but there's some power that has to be there to take that sleeping individual to make that a dreaming individual. So then Maya, and then uh, living beings in the universe. So that same cosmic mind that is dreaming, that itself has become all the objects in the dream. They're not real objects in a dream. That's also reducible back to the cosmic mind or consciousness and everything. So we see it's all that one reality. And if we say Brahman is only nirguna, then we miss out on all of the other aspects of it. Then Brahman is also saguna, but the saguna aspect doesn't have to be there. You can sleep without dreaming, but you can't dream without sleeping. So we can have Brahman without the Ishvara aspect, but we can't have Ishvara without the Brahman aspect. And they're not two different things. It's all the same person, we can say. Not a person, of course, but that same ultimate reality.
Does it mean that Thakur talks about Leela? Leela contains all these things of Dhamma.
Yeah, now we don't have to take this analogy so literally that it's really just a dream. But yes, lila, from this point of view, is whatever that is projected out of this cosmic mind and becomes this world. That's lila, God's play. Why? Because who is it who has become the actor in the dream? The same sleeper and dreamer. Brahman itself enters into creates this universe, enters into it, like the spider creates the web and then lives in the web. So that way it's a lila, and there's Maya there because the Brahman forgets itself and identifies it just as we do. We have a dream, and we become 100% identified with the actor in the dream. We have no idea that the real I is lying in bed sleeping somewhere. We may have some feeling at some point that no, this has to be a dream, and then we wake up from the dream, but they're not the same. Even then, we wake up, we're a little surprised. Oh, I'm lying in bed. It's not 100% that we really know that, but still, we may have some sense of it. So this is that unity that we have, the unity between Brahman, Ishvara, Maya, and Jagat, and this whole universe. And these are all different. Sometimes they'll talk about Brahman and Ishvara and Hiranyagarbha and this Virat. They'll use different terms for all of these things, all different aspects, we can say, of this one ultimate reality. The Upanishadic view. Yeah. But we don't have to dismiss this universe as just a mistaken view that there's really no snake at all. There's just a rope there, and it's just I'm misinterpreting everything. Thakur's point is that this is all the glory of the Divine Mother. We can accept this as a manifestation. See Mother dwelling within everything, worship everything as that divine manifestation. The difference really between the Shaktas and the Advaitins is more one of emphasis. Do we look upon this world as Maya in the sense that it's something to be avoided and something to be transcended, or do we look upon this as this Aishwarya, as the glory of the Divine Mother, this Shakti idea? Otherwise, there's not a tremendous amount of difference between the 2 points of view. But Thakur liked the other one. He liked the Shakti point of view. He said, I don't like to call this world a dream. He doesn't say that that's wrong. He doesn't say that that's not a very helpful way of looking at it for some people. That was his personality. He didn't care for that. He wanted to be able to enjoy sport in this world, seeing everything as divine, everything is the play of mother. That was. He said, "I'm a child of mother. I'd like to be happy. I'd like to enjoy things." Balaram's father. It is very difficult, sir. So, yeah, this whole idea that renouncing the world, what does it really mean? It's first of all the technical term, Shongshatagora, in Bengali we say, to renounce the world. It means we've chosen a different path, the monastic path. Doesn't mean that we're not living in the world. Everyone has their samsara. Or for monks, our samsara is the order. We also have our home. We also have our duties and obligations, just like everybody else does. But there'll be some basic distinctions. But it's not that we're living outside of the world. It's just that our world is a little different. It's not quite the same, that we don't have the same types of duties. We don't have the same type of family relationships. That we've avoided that, which allows us to avoid a lot of the natural attachments and entanglements of the world. That's all. Master. The aspirant, while practicing spiritual discipline, looks upon the world as a framework of illusion. Again, after the attainment of knowledge, the vision of God, this very world becomes to him a mansion of mirth. Now, this is another very brilliant teaching that Thakur has. He's explaining it in one way here. Other times he talks about this in terms of neti neti and iti iti. There's two different ways of looking at it. That there's a type of spiritual practice where we first have to take care of misconceptions before we can have a fuller understanding of the final truth. So, if our problem is that we have this false identification with the body, the mind, and the senses, and all of that, then we have to start out with the process of neti neti. We have to separate ourselves. Once we separate ourselves, we can realize that I am pure spirit. I'm one with the Brahman. I'm the Atman. I'm not this body, mind, sense. I'm something beyond all of that. And then Thakur says, after that realization, then we can see that everything that we said was non-Brahman. Everything we said was asat. Now we see as a manifestation of the Brahman. So first we have to take this kind of negative point of view. So the same thing here. We've seen this before. These are the two songs, the Ram Prasad song and the, what was his name? Satubhai? The other Goswami. Aju Goswami, yeah, who gave that answer song. And Thakur liked the other one better. But really, they don't contradict each other, because one is at the time of sadhana. There's a very, very subtle point. Thakur says that when we say Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, that this is at the time of sadhana, we say that. If we're real Advaitins, then how can we say that this world is false? Everything has to be real. But he says no, that this is in order to get rid of this false attachment to things and false identification with things, we practice this neti neti, this negation, and later affirmation. So in the beginning, we can take this point of view that everything is a possible attachment for me. I have to be very cautious, and I have to make sure that I build my inner strength up and everything. Then after that, I can enjoy everything. So this is, Thakur gives so many examples. This tender mind. He said it's like milk getting mixed up with water. But what we have to do is go into solitude and churn this milk and to let it sit and turn it into curd, then churn it into butter. Then we can even let it float in the water. It won't mix with it. So later we can do that. But in the beginning, we have to be a little careful. We have to have a little bit of a frightful attitude, a little bit. that this world really can swallow us up if we're not careful. We have to be a little bit, have that attitude a little bit. But then afterwards, we want to be heroes and say, now nothing can attract me because I know that greater attraction is there. And then we're on very strong, firm ground. We don't have to be so careful. Yeah. I like very much the statement that Swamiji made. He said, when I was young, I wouldn't walk on the same side of the street that the theater was on. Uh, But now I can live in a house of prostitutes and it won't affect me at all because he'd become that huge tree at that time. So in the beginning, not fearful attitude, but cautious and about who we mix with and what we do and everything like that. And looking upon this world, a little bit of a trap. Thakur says that sometimes we have to look upon uh, this world as a snake pit. Uh, and we have to just the way you'd walk, and you have to care every step. You have to be careful. Uh, that venomous cobras, are relatives as venomous cobras, and the world is a raging forest fire in the beginning. And just to tell the mind that unless you're cautious, you'll get swallowed up. You'll get mixed up with the world, and you'll get attached and entangled and everything. So be very careful in the beginning. So take that attitude in the beginning that this world is a framework of illusion, that I don't want to, if I think it's real, I'll get attached to it. Let me say that, no, this is all transitory, it's all fleeting, it can't satisfy me. Then afterwards, I can really enjoy the whole world. How Thakur, how much he enjoyed everything, the circus, the theater, the museum, so many things. It was just pure joy for him because there was nothing could attract him. Nothing could be an attachment for him. And of course, we can't compare ourselves to him, but just to get some idea of what it means. He liked this idea of this world is a mansion of mirth. He really liked that song much better. Mojakuti. It is written in the books of the Vaishnavas, God can be attained through faith alone. Reasoning pushes him far away. Faith alone. Now, there's also this word faith. Uh, these are very heavily skewed terms that have different meanings in different traditions and everything. Sometimes we think of faith as something that uh, I may not really understand. Somebody tells me to believe in it, so I believe in it. I have faith in that. This is not that. This term, Vishwas, Vishwasa, Vishwas in Bengali, it really means a deep, abiding conviction of the truth of something. So it's not that it's a blind faith. I don't really understand it, but I've been told that it's true, so I'm accepting it that way. And no, I've examined it. I've observed things. I may not have realized it yet, but I've seen these great souls have practiced this. They've had these experiences. I see they're genuine. I have tremendous faith in that. Conviction, conviction. Or Swami Swamiji always used that word conviction. He said conviction itself is a kind of realization. So, and that this is really the very end. We develop this conviction. This conviction, sometimes Thakur says, is bakulata, this longing, is the final step before realization. Sometimes he says it's vishwas, that this tremendous conviction that's followed by realization. So you have Thakur. This is why he was always happy when Narendra questioned everything. Otherwise, he wouldn't develop that type of conviction. If he simply accepted things without understanding them or without really believing in them, it would have been hollow and empty. And those are the things that fall away. We can't hold on to those things. They're not very strong for us. So we need to really develop this burning conviction that yes, nobody can convince me that this isn't true. It doesn't mean I've realized it, but I'm convinced that I can have that realization if I follow these teachings. Huh? Something like that. What faith Krishna Kishore had, Thakur always refers to him. At Vrindavan, a low caste man drew water for him from a well. Yeah, there's a longer story about this. That he was very thirsty. He went to the well and he saw a man there and he asked, could he draw some water? And that man hesitated and he said, why are you hesitating? He said, I'm from a very low caste. And then it goes on. So Krishna Kishore said to him, repeat the name of Shiva. After the man had repeated the name of Shiva, Krishna Kishore unhesitatingly drank the water. Now, for those of us in different cultures that don't know about these caste rules and distinctions, it sounds a little strange. Huh? Why do we care who draws water for us? Huh? But these caste rules were so strong at that time that for and this Krishna Kishore must have been a Brahmin, huh? The Orthodox Brahmin. For someone like that to allow an outcast, untouchable, to draw water for him would be unthinkable. And for him to have so much faith in the name of God, it shows that tremendous conviction that he would unhesitatingly drink water from him. Yeah, this is one of those cultural things. I remember the first time I read this, I thought, what's the big deal? Why should he even have him ask if repeat the name of Shiva? He's just another guy. Let him draw water. But we have to see it in its context, the cultural context. He used to say, if a man chants the name of God, does he need to spend money anymore for the atonement of his sins? Yeah, there's so many different things that people do to atone for sins and everything, and going on big pilgrimages and making big offerings and building almshouses and things like that. Uh, the Krishna Kishore's idea, just repeat the name of God. There's this story I never remember. Was it Kabir's son, somebody's son, that he was left in charge? Was it Kabir? Maybe. Anyhow, that he went away and he left his son in charge. People used to go for spiritual advice and everything. And uh, somebody came to him and said, I did this terrible thing, this and that. And he said, you repeat the name of Rama twice, and then you'll be free from all sin. So his father came back and he asked what happened, and he told him everything. And his father got very angry. He said, this is the amount of faith you have in the name of Rama, that you made him repeat it twice. Once would have been enough. So we have these nice stories of how much faith people had in the name of God. So Krishna Kishore used to say, if a man chants the name of God, does he need to spend money anymore for the atonement of his sins? How foolish. He was amazed to see people worshiping God with the sacred tulsi leaf in order to get rid of their illnesses. I think because he felt all they had to do was take the name of God. At the bathing ghat here, he said to us, please bless me that I may pass my days repeating Rama's holy name. Now, we were talking about different Vaishnava traditions. Those who worship Rama very often will have equal regard for Shiva. This is one distinction of the Vaishnava tradition of the Rama worshippers, Rama Bhaktas, as opposed to the Krishna, the Vaishnava tradition of in Bengal. They're really more exclusively worshippers of either the baby Gopal or Govinda, that aspect of Krishna's life, early life, or Caitanya Deva. They won't care too much for Shiva. Huh? But because Rama was a worshipper of Shiva, actually Krishna was too, but they won't talk about that, then they have the equal regard. We have our Rameshwaram temple and everything. So there's a very nice connection between Rama and Shiva. I don't really understand it, but Thakur always says Rama was Shiva's guru and Shiva was Rama's guru. I don't know exactly how Rama is Shiva's guru, but there must be some story about that. Huh? So at the bathing ghat here, he said to us, please bless me that I may pass my days repeating Rama's holy name. Whenever I went to his house, he would dance with joy at the sight of me. Rama said to Lakshmana, brother, whenever you find people singing and dancing in the ecstasy of divine love, know for certain that I am there. Caitanya is an example of such ecstatic love. Now, when Sri Ramakrishna was growing up, he didn't care for Caitanya Deva very much. It's very interesting. These are all very interesting cultural things, because in his village, there were worshippers of all different types and different types of temples. But it doesn't seem like he had too much contact, or if he did, too much reverence for that tradition, because he used to say that we thought this Chaitanya Deva was somebody set up by these Vaishnava people. Didn't have too much. So when he went to Navadvip, he was curious to see if he would feel anything. But later he had his vision of Chaitanya Deva and Nityananda, and really developed such tremendous devotion and felt a oneness with him also. That because if he thought himself to be one with Rama and Krishna and looked upon Chaitanya Deva as an avatar, then he also felt oneness with him. And they were so similar in so many ways with this udipana, this association triggering some divine mood, and this bakulata, this tremendous longing for God. They're very similar in their personality and loving to sing the name of God in the kirtan and all of the spiritual moods and ecstasies and everything. We find all of that in the life of Chaitanya Deva also. So he says, Chaitanya is an example of such ecstatic love. He laughed and wept and danced and sang in divine ecstasy. He was an incarnation. And this is something that Thakur didn't really, I won't say he didn't accept it, he didn't have much conviction about that until he had his own direct experience. God incarnated himself through Chaitanya. So it became a very strong conviction with him later. Sri Ramakrishna, now remember, he's talking to Balaram's father. So these are things that they'll be very impressed. They'll think, oh, this Sri Ramakrishna, he also has tremendous regard and love and respect for Chaitanya Deva. He should be a good man. Sri Ramakrishna sang a song describing the divine love of Chaitanya. Then Balaram's father, Mani Malik, Benipal, and several other devotees took leave of the master. In the evening, the devotees from Kangsaritola, Calcutta, arrived. The master danced and sang with them in a state of divine fervor. Yeah, the best time to go to Sri Ramakrishna was at sunset. As soon as the sun went down, he automatically went into a spiritual mood. Not that he didn't during the day, but especially at that time, they would notice. As soon as it would start to get dark, sometimes a little samadhi or bhava, and then, but if there's any kirtan, singing and dancing. After dancing, he went into a spiritual mood and said, I shall go part of the way myself. Kishore came forward to massage his feet. Kishore is M's younger brother, and who was also a member of the Brahmo Samaj. There were several members of the Brahmo Samaj who really had equal devotion for Sri Ramakrishna. There were some who had some curious devotion for Sri Ramakrishna, and there were some who didn't care for him very much. And there were some who were jealous and a little bit antagonistic, all sorts of different types there. But Kishore was very devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, even though, because they were staunch members of the Brahmo Samaj before they met him. So, and everyone had regard for Keshav. Of course, they considered it scandal with the marriage, as a daughter and everything, but otherwise, and there was some family connection through M's wife and everything, and with Keshav himself. Kishore came forward to massage his feet, but the master did not allow anyone to touch him. Now, this touching of Sri Ramakrishna is a curious thing. It depended entirely on the state of his mind and on the different period. He went through different periods. So at certain times, there was one period of time when in that state of samadhi, no one could touch him except for Baburam. Even Swamiji, even Narendra and Rakal and others, he said that at that state, that this Baburam, Swami Premananda later, was so pure that he needed to have him near because he was the one who could hold him in that state. When Thakur went into samadhi, he could fall. We know that he fell. He cracked his tooth, he broke his arm. He needed somebody to be with him at that time. But this wasn't always that. Other times we see even Hriday could hold him up in that state of samadhi. So he went through different periods and different stages and everything. We remember when Brinde, the the maidservant, when she went and touched his feet, how he screamed and yelled and had to get Ganges water poured on it. The same Sri Ramakrishna went to the Star Theater, and afterwards, the actresses, many of whom were considered at least to be uh, very low, and many of them were mistresses for wealthy men and things like that, that many of them came and actually touched. They all made pranam, bow down to him. Some actually touched his feet. And did he jump up and scream? Very nicely, he said, Takma, please, not, just from a distance. But not that he felt any terrible pain at that time. So it depended on his state of mind. So in this particular time, otherwise, this Kishori probably massaged his feet many, many times. So, and these weren't his decisions on his part. These were all natural things that in a particular state, uh, there were times when he couldn't touch any metal. Now, was this all the time? No. He used to eat off of metal plates. Then just he went through a certain period when he said, now I find that I have to have everything made of these stone things. He asked him, can you buy some for me like that? Because he couldn't touch any metal at that time. So he went through different periods, and the Divine Mother made him go through all of these things. Each thing served a certain purpose. We don't know exactly what it was. So we can't judge him by the way he reacted at one particular time in one particular instance. Say with the maidservant Rinde. Sometimes we think, oh, what kind of an avatar is he? What kind of compassion making her feel so bad? But just in that state. The other thing is, we talk about Sri Ramakrishna that he could look into a person and know everything about that person. And then we wonder, when M came the first time, why was he so surprised that he's married and has children and so disappointed? Huh? And then later we see Sri Ramakrishna would say sometimes, I got into that state of mind where I could look inside a person and see everything there. So it's not like he was always in that state of mind. So he could do it on purpose if he wanted to, or sometimes it would just automatically happen. He said, Mother put me in that state of mind where I could see it that way. So very hard to judge him and understand why he behaves the way that he does at different times. Then this statement, I shall go part of the way myself. Who knows what he meant by that? They're very cryptic, mystical types of statements. Ishan arrived. Now we'll get with Ishan again. The poor man. Thakur told him so many times. We've seen it for months, so many times that this Vedic type of Gayatri mantra and everything will be much less effective for you than doing this worship according to this seeing the Divine Mother. So many times he told him so nicely and everything, and Ishan just for some reason, even though he loved Sri Ramakrishna, he was a good man, very devoted and everything. For some reason, he just would not listen to him, and he gets blasted for it. We'll get to that whole chapter. So Ishan arrived. The master was seated still in a spiritual mood. After a while, he became engaged in talk with Ishan. It was Ishan's desire to practice the Purush Charana of the Gayatri. Now, Thakur had nothing against the Gayatri mantra, but he knew this Ishan, and he knew that he was a little proud of things and everything, and somehow he knew that it would be better for him if he did it according to what Thakur says, the Tantra, which means something with looking upon God as mother, something like that. Whatever it was, this Ishan was so stubborn about this. Why God himself comes in front of you and tells you what to do, why not listen? Huh? But he's, for some reason, otherwise he was such a generous, wonderful person. Master to Ishan, follow your own intuition. I hope there's no more doubt in your mind. Is there any? The path of the Vedas is not meant for the Kali Yuga. He's so clear about it. The path of Tantra is efficacious. Ishan, I've almost resolved to perform an atonement ceremony. Pretty much saying that I've decided not to listen to you. Huh? A nice way of putting it, huh? But pretty much that's what it means. Master, do you mean to say that one cannot follow the path of Tantra? That which is Brahman is also Shakti Kali. Then he sings the song, knowing the secret that Kali is one with the highest Brahman. I have discarded once for all both righteousness and sin. Okay, we could stop here. So there's a very special day today. This is a day when all of our spiritual practices, our prayer and everything, especially efficacious. This is belief, of course, that many people have, that on these very special holy days, the day that Thakur was born, this is a very good day that we pray for him, to pray to him for love and devotion and compassion, discrimination, everything, and non-attachment. And I pray also for all of us that we may all get a little bit of that. Okay, let us close then. I had a nice day. I watched a lot of this Bellarmine program today. It was really very, very inspiring. Even though you don't see all of the people there, that's the sad thing. They were allowed to go at different hours, but not, throughout the whole day. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanugam Bhatata Vikraham Vai Ishavataram Bharanashamhidhyam Tam Ramakrishna Shirasa Namama. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.